Om Akandamandalakaram Vyaptam Yena Characharam Tatpadam Darshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good evening to all of you who have joined us today for one of my favorite sessions on storytelling. I'm Anvita and I'm going to be your host for today. My journey with exploring mandala started with the story mandala. So stories are something that's very personal to me. About a year ago, I heard somebody say, fishes are so used to living in water that they don't see water. Similarly, human beings are so used to living in stories that we don't see stories. Storytelling goes a long, long way in human history. Right from the primitive art of cave paintings to depict memories, to the movies /series /short films, etc., that we see today are all nothing but stories. This very moment is a story. Our memories are stories. Everything around us can be a story. Narrative storytelling is a healing process. And today we have all gathered here to witness healing through narrative storytelling, with its core essence of openness and empathy. Storytelling is expansive as a mandala itself. We take a memory or an emotion and add bare bones to it. We add content, we add polarities, creativity, and so much, and it expands like a mandala by itself. And it is also a very personal process because storytelling goes beyond the physical dimension of the human race. It goes deep into your mind, your emotions, and it comes from deep within. How storytelling has helped me heal is through reflective distancing. The ability to see a memory which is happy, sad, or joyful or painful, and look at it from a distance and see how the memory has look at the you factor in it, look at the me factor in the story, has what has helped me heal. I am very excited for today's evening on storytelling. So moving right into it, I have a few requests as the host. Please stay on mute and try to stay on video as much as possible. It will encourage the storytellers. And if you have any appreciation for the storyteller, you can put it on chat. It will be read out to the storyteller after the completion of their story. So moving right into today's session, we have our first storyteller for today, Ragini Tiwari. Hi, Ragini.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
All yours, Ragini.
"25 years ago, when I was a little girl of 4 years of age, I had a small red-colored tricycle that was even tinier than me. Every day, my mother used to make me ready to sit in that cycle. I had little curly hair that she would tie into a ponytail in the center of my head, make me wear my favorite pair of blue gelish jeans and a bright colored pink top. And thus I would be ready to sit in my cycle and ride it all inside my drawing room. I explored all the nooks and corners of my home sitting in that cycle. I enjoyed the movement it offered me as a little child. And then as time went by, I grew taller and taller. So every now and then, my parents got me a bigger cycle. But there was one problem. The cycle always came with two side support wheels, as I was unable to balance the cycle on my own. So while all my friends would ride the cycle in two wheels, I had four wheels. And that would make me upset, even though I practiced a lot. Even when I became a teenager, the cycle had two extra wheels. So one day, I hatched a plan. There was a small hill near our house. It was small but very narrow and narrow enough for children. So I decided to take my cycle and my younger brother all the way up to the hill. Me and my brother pushed the cycle all the way up to the hill. And panting and sweating, we reached the top of the hill. But I was excited because I had a plan. I had decided that I would ask my brother to remove the two side wheels and I would sit on the cycle and be on the edge of the hill. And he would push me from behind. And when I would go down the hill, I would start pedaling on my own. And that's how I would learn how to balance the cycle. So as I sat on the cycle, my brother removed the two side wheels and I stood on the cycle looking at the edge, looking at the view of the hilltop that offered me. And as I was gazing at the view below, suddenly my brother pushed me from behind. And with a lot of force in the cycle, I went down the hill. As I went down with a lot of speed, my heart was beating fast. My legs were up in the air sideways. They were not even on the saddle as I had imagined. And I could feel the cycle shaking very hard beneath me. I felt all its parts were loosening up and about to give away. And then as I went down the cycle, after some time, I saw the narrow slope turning into a flatter one. I thought it was time to execute my plan. I thought now I have to start pedaling so that by the time the slope comes, I would have learned how to cycle. But instead, the cycle started tilting. It started wobbling more and more. And it tilted so much to the right that after some time it dragged me on the floor and fell down. There were clouds of dust all around me. I could feel my skin peeling off. My whole right side was bruised. My knees were open. My palms were bruised. And my right cheek, which was burning earlier with excitement, now had so many bruises. And dust had started to sink in into those wounds. And as I lay there, beginning to feel my pain, I heard laughter from a distance. It was my brother laughing at my plight. He knew all the time, even he was younger, that my plan will fail miserably. But hearing his laughter, I forgot my pain. That day, I got up and dusted myself, and I felt my fear balance was gone. Within days, I had learned how to cycle on my own. And then started my cycling experience. I explored all the narrow lanes of our neighborhood in my cycle. I would make my friends sit behind me. I explored all the small bridges, little streams in that cycle. And I enjoyed all my teenage years because of the cycling experience. Then, as I grew up, became an adult, I moved to the cities for work. I don't remember at what point of time my cycle was left behind me. My cycling days were behind me, as I was too occupied with my work. Every day I would go to my office, taking a bus or a metro, and I would peep outside from the bus window, look at the traffic. I would look at the cyclists who would very nicely make their way through the traffic. I admired their shining cycles, their mountain bikes, their gears, and looking at them, I had an urge to cycle deep inside me, but I still couldn't connect to the cycling experience I had previously. Then I would reach the office and I would be very confined to the small desk space, to the narrow chair and the computer, and my mind would work continuously in the office, but my body was left apart. I couldn't connect to it. And as I lost touch with my body, with movement, with freedom, I lost touch with my heart. I was losing touch in ways how to connect back to my heart. And all this was happening deep inside me. Outside, I was just sit logged into my computer whole day. And one of the days in my office, as I was sitting in one corner, drained with work, tired, disconnected, it was the day our Diwali bonus was due. There was a buzz and excitement in the office as we were getting the Diwali bonus for the first time. So all the colleagues were discussing what they would buy, and I was sitting quiet in one corner. So one of my colleagues came to me and asked me in a lighter mood, "What are you planning to buy with the Diwali bonus?" And to him, I replied in a very drained manner, very philosophically. I said, "I wish I could buy some movement, some balance in my life." And he jokingly replied, "Why don't you buy a cycle?" And went off. Listening to him that day, something triggered in me. I felt very restless. And that day, collecting the Diwali bonus from office, I straight went to the cycle store. There was a huge decathlon store that I entered, and so many cycles were there in front of me. But right in the middle, there was a bright, mint colored, shiny cycle that caught my attention. And without thinking much, I bought that cycle that day. And like a prized possession, I got it home. I kept it inside the house. I was too scared to take it outside. And for days, it just slid inside my house, in my room, even in my bedroom. I would wake up to its side, sleep to its side, and I would dust it, even though it was brand new. One day outside, it was very dark. The children weren't there in the narrow lane who used to ride their cycles, and I was always scared of them. So, as it was dark and empty, I finally had the courage to take the cycle out. And as I took it out, I kept my foot on the saddle, and then I slowly started pushing it forward, trembling, wobbling, disbalancing. But in some time, as the cycle moved freely ahead, it passed its freedom back to me. And from that day onwards, after years, I started cycling back. Every day, I would look forward to the sunrises, sunsets, and to go in my cycle and explore them. I had something to do when I would return from the office. I explored all the beautiful parts of the valley that I lived in that cycle. The best part was when I would go down from the hill in the cycle very freely. It would just remove all the thoughts from my head, and I would cycle down feeling free as much as possible. Connecting back to the cycling experience has connected back me to the playfulness that I had as a child. It has connected me to movement, to freedom, and it has taught me many important lessons. One of the lessons is as I enjoy riding the cycle downhill the most, I feel whenever my life is going down the narrowest hill of fear and imbalance, I know how to take control. I know how to press the brakes. I know when to press the brakes. And most importantly, I just know how to do my work, to keep pedaling and enjoying the ride. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ragini. Such a beautiful story. You can type in your appreciations in the chat box. This is from me. Such a beautiful story relating the simplest things to joy and freedom. Love the way you narrated. Thank you so much, Ragini. I could feel the connect you had with your cycle. This is from Aditya. Wonderful story, Ragini. Brilliantly narrated. This is from Prasad. Every movement and the brush of wind on my face. This is from Aditya. Love the growth aspect and the way everything connected together. Beautifully narrated. This is from Kokila. Love the way you said, I know when to use the brake and when to go. Speaks volumes. Beautifully narrated, Ragini, from Sivapriya. Love the lucid narrative. It was such a flow. I caught myself smiling throughout. This is from Deepa Mahesh. Aishwarya says, could see the little Ragini overcoming the fears to grow and befriending the cycle. I was visualizing the entire story. Such beautiful narrative skill. Love the way you explore with the cycle. Sashi Prabha says, Ragini, when you narrated about the new cycle that you bought, reminded what I'm doing with my cycle. Loved how the cycle cycled back. You have a very soft, smooth narration, Ragini. Thank you for sharing this story. This is from Harshvardhan. Bhagyashree says, wow, Ragini, beautifully narrated. The cycle cycling back in life and giving lessons on how to live life, getting past the fear. I was able to relate to you, the child experiencing the thrill, excitement, fear, and the adult taking that step to go beyond. Shruthi says, hi Ragini, love the story and beautifully narrated. Thank you so much, Ragini. It was such a beautiful narration. It was so warm and I loved listening to you narrate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Next up on our list, we have Aditya, who will be sharing a story of healing through narrative storytelling. All yours, Aditya.
My story starts with me being in school, where it was fourth standard and I was just moving on to fifth standard. This was a time where everything was changing. I could really feel how there were so many things that that were becoming different in school. I started going to school with full pants now instead of shorts. I started carrying pens in my bags instead of pencils. And I started to really notice how things were changing around. I felt like I was really growing up. It felt like a dramatic change, and I was really liking it. In all of this, I started to understand I was a very, very outgoing kid. I was I was someone who would just walk up to someone and start a conversation. I was someone who would just be very curious about people and their lives. I would want to know, oh, okay, this is a new person I can talk to today. What can I learn from them? This is another person I have met today, and this is what they made me feel like. And I really enjoyed hopping from place to place and meeting people and understanding their stories and their ideas and where they come from. And so naturally, I was very extroverted. But at some point during this transition where we were not just carrying pens and not just wearing full pants, or I was not just wearing full pants, there was another element that started to change in me, and that was puberty. So puberty was something that really hit me hard, and I felt like there was a lot of change that was happening, more so than I thought I could handle. Suddenly, I started getting very restless. I would see pimples all over my face. I would get random heat boils on my body. And all of this made me feel less of myself and more of someone else. At this point, I didn't know how to deal with any of this. And I was just totally lost and confused. Every time I entered my classroom, I constantly felt like people were constantly looking at me. I felt like I was suddenly the center of everything that was happening. It was no longer about going out to people, going out to people and reaching out to them and going up and starting a conversation. It was more of me looking at people look at me and telling myself, hey, you know what, maybe let's just not do that anymore today and take it a little slow. And during this process, I really started to, it really felt like a sudden disconnect to me. I really felt like there was a sudden distance between who I really was. And I could no longer feel the connect I did once to people. I started getting a lot more lonely and a lot more isolated. And I would find the quieter corners of my class and just go sit down. I was no longer the person who went up and just spoke to people. In all of this, all I felt was a sense of chaos, and all I felt was a lack of understanding of where everything was going. And this started to not only affect me mentally, but also my grades were falling down. I was starting to fail exams, and I was really clueless about where I was headed. But it was at this time that I met one of my best friends and someone that I could really, really connect with. And this was my PlayStation 2, who had just entered my life. And suddenly it was a world of possibilities. Suddenly it was a gateway to something so much more. It was a portal through which I could travel and come back whenever I wanted. In all this loneliness, I felt like the PlayStation 2 really understood me. I didn't have to think about how it saw me or what it thought of me, because I knew as long as I had the connection to the PlayStation 2 through my controller, we were totally in sync. I didn't have to speak a word. If I wanted to go out and become a Marine in the US Army and take down the enemy behind front lines, the PlayStation 2 knew exactly what I had in mind, even before I could think it. And it would just seamlessly execute whatever I asked. I had started to feel a sense of such control, of such empowerment, that everything else became irrelevant. I felt like I didn't even need to talk, I didn't even need to speak. All I had to do was hold on to that controller and just keep going. And it didn't matter what game I was playing. At one point, I was a Marine. At one point, I was a spy. At one point, I was the best racing driver in the world, racing Formula One cars down the tracks of the world, down the most famous tracks in the world. And I just felt so much power. I felt so good knowing that I could do and be anything I wanted. But during all of this, one thing that became very clear to me was I didn't need people anymore. All I needed was my PlayStation. All I needed was that controller in my hand. I didn't want to talk to people anymore. The world had just become a blur. It become a tunnel that I was living in. And I didn't want to come out. It felt so good. I felt so understood. I felt so heard. I felt so in sync with everything. Why do I even have to go out? Why do I even have to go down to play with my friends? Why do I have to go and really meet people? It all felt so unnecessary. And this went on for about 2 years, 3 years, until I reached 8th standard. And I was just having a good time. I was just going home right after school, didn't bother taking notes in class, didn't bother talking to people, just go sit through classes and just wait for that moment in time where I would come back and hold a controller in my hand again. But then something tragic happened in the 8th standard. My best friend was not feeling well anymore. He was not reading the discs I was putting properly. And at first I thought, okay, maybe it's the scratches that may be there on the disc, but he was not really feeling well. He was trying to give up. And I was again at a point where I felt very lost because I didn't know what I would do if he wasn't there. He was such a big part of my life for the last 3 years. He carried me through so much and supported me and just understood me that I just didn't want to see him die or go away. But then finally the day did come where he stopped working completely. He had just moved on and I was still there. It felt very unfair to me. It felt like, why should this happen to me? Why now? We were having such a good time. How is this all happening so sudden? And through all of this, I was really scared because now I had to actually go out and interact with the world. Now I actually had to go take notes in class. Now I actually had to go talk to people. And I didn't know how to do that. I was still the scared kid I was back in 5th standard. I still didn't know how to do any of those things. But ever since I came to 9th, there was no pressure to be with people. It was an important year. I had to focus more on my academics because 9th and 10th were supposedly a very, very important phases in my life. And there was an intense pressure to really focus on my academics. And I did. And I did do that. I did focus on my academics. Although I was still failing exams, I still knew I was accumulating knowledge. And so there was no need to socialize. It was like a norm that in 9th and 10th, I didn't have to go out and meet people because it was considered okay in 9th and 10th. And so I played along. I played along with that. And I thought, okay, it's another 2 years. I can do this. I still don't need people. I just have to focus and think about what will happen after that. And so the 2 years went by. There was a lot of pressures. There was a lot of challenges, but I overcame them. And finally came the time where I finished my 10th grade. I had scored good marks and my parents were happy. And I felt like, okay, I had really achieved something. It felt like a game again. And now in 11th, I was a little scared again because now, again, I don't know how to talk to people. I don't know how to go out and feel like I'm at the center of everything that's happening. And I just thought of it as a new blank slate that I'm on. That I have an opportunity to paint the picture I want to, because now I was moving out of school with all the people I knew and I used to interact with and going to meet a new set of people who I knew had nothing, they knew nothing about. It didn't matter to me right now about how it would be when I walked into class because I know that they don't know me, and it was an opportunity for me. It was a blank slate. It was a plate that was empty, and I could pick the fruits and the vegetables and the food that I was going to put into it. It didn't feel like a burden anymore. And so on the first day of my 11th standard, I just went into the new block that I was assigned to. I went up and I see a person standing right outside the class that we were assigned to. And during this walk, I could actually feel my heart beating in my heart because it felt scarier and scarier as I got closer. Again, I felt the outside world drowning out, and I didn't know what to do, but I just kept walking. And I walked and I walked. What may have been maybe 10 meters felt like a lifetime, but I would still walk. And as I got through to the other end, I remember meeting my friend and going to him and saying, "Hi, my name is Aditya." And after that, I just remember he he came back and he said, "Hey, my name is Aditya too." And in that moment, I felt understood because I didn't feel like I needed to connect any more than that. It felt like, okay, this I can do this. I have this within me. He has the same name as me. What could have been better on my first encounter with my first friend in 11? And so what would happen for the next 2 years is he would actually end up introducing me to some more of his friends. And he would actually help introduce me to some of the people that I would build a bond with for a very, very long time. And I felt so much satisfaction knowing that I felt like I belonged somewhere again. I felt like I was understood. And I no longer felt the need. I no longer felt like I was being at the center of everything that was happening. I felt a certain sync again. It felt like those moments in games where I just felt connected and I didn't have to do anything more. And so through all of this, I regained my control from gaming and started to embrace the chaos. And I still am, and I still am in that journey where I'm still learning to embrace the chaos every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. That was a beautiful narration. This is from Prasad. Wonderfully narrated, Aditya. You are glowing like the Aditya, the sun now, in your relationships. Very well put forward. This is from me. The journey of understanding connections and letting go and making new ones. Beautifully narrated, Aditya. Thank you so much. I lost in thought about how I make itself a loser and an achiever. This is from Sashi Prabha. Such a lovely way of exploring the outside through the game perspective. Loved how you folded and then unfolded continuously and with so much simplicity. This is from Ragini. What a ride of a story. From half pants to pimples to PS2 to Aditya upgraded. Loved it, Adi. Very heartfully narrated, Aditya. Thanks for sharing this. This is from Harsh. Heartwarming story of transformation and connecting to self. You have a sweet, infectious smile. This is from Jayashree. Bhagya says, thank you, Aditya, for sharing the story. I was able to relate to the confusion in the puberty stage, feeling lost, finding connection in PS2, non-judgmental friend. Overcoming that awkwardness, you spoke through the heart, the journey of finding true connections, taking control in your own hand than PS2 controller. With a smiley. Could relate a lot, Aditya. The narration was unfolding like a movie, nicely narrated. This is from Sivapriya. Loved how you lost and found yourself in the most simplest of way. Felt like I was there through your journey. Thanks for sharing. This is from Kokila. Thank you so much, Adi. I could really relate. I could really visualize your story happening. Thank you for sharing this. Oh, we have another. Thanks, Adi, for sharing your feelings from heart excitement, disappointment, friendship, separation, disconnect, confusion, establishing the connection within yourself and to others. This is from Aishwarya. Okay. So moving on to our next storyteller, we have Jayashree with us. Hello, Jayashree. Jayashree, can you unmute?
Yeah. Are you able to hear me now, Anvita?
Yes, Jayashree, we can hear you.
Yeah. Okay, there's a lag. The connectivity is a little erratic here where I am now.
Yes.
Are you able to see me?
Yeah, I think your video is stuck. Is it the same for everybody? Yeah, I think there is a video issue.
The net connection is very erratic here.
Okay. Yeah, you can narrate, Jayashree.
I will start. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. This was in the first week of June this year. It was probably June 3rd, 4th, and it was morning 9 o'clock. I stood in my
I think Jayashree has lost connection. Okay, I think we can move on to our next storyteller and then come back to Jayashree. I think there is some network issue on her end. Okay, so our next storyteller for today is Bhagishri. Hello, Bhagya.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, all yours, Bhagya.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am Bhagyashree. I am 31 years old and I'm a homemaker. I live in Bangalore in a spacious house in a big complex. I used to work in a multinational company, a corporate, as a project manager. There I handled big size teams and critical projects. I was one of the early achievers in my company. I was given a project when I had 4 years of experience in my company. I was given a critical project and asked to handle a very big team. And I managed to do it with a lot of grace. So that how my corporate journey, I was one of the early achievers and also one of the highly valued employees of my organization. For work, I got a chance to travel to different places, and like not just work, otherwise also. I did a few Himalayan treks, like the difficult ones, like when it was my first trekking experience, and doing that like on a Himalayan trek was a big step for me, like a big trying to experience something very different. I did treks, I traveled to different places. I married love of my life against many odds. In past few years, I'm going through the process of identifying, like working with some of my fears and insecurities. One big step that I took towards it was changing from a corporate girl to a homemaker. Working on Rather than working on glorious money-making projects, working on involving myself in something, social projects, or maybe finding myself better. Now I'm much more confident that no matter where I am, I can live my life decently. But things were a bit different when I was growing up. I lived in a simple, humble family. When I started going to high school, that was the time when I was exposed to a different lifestyle. I was exposed to different people in my life. I made new friends. To me, it felt like going from a small town to a big city and getting overwhelmed by the glare of the city. My friends used to call me home. When I used to visit to their place, they lived in tall buildings and big apartments. I used to see their moms wearing jeans, fluently talking in English, going for work, driving their kids off to school. Then I would come back home and see my simple one-room kitchen home. I would see my mother wearing a sari and doing household work. She was just a homemaker. I would feel very small. I would feel very inferior, a little backward. I was the topper in my school, though I had the most amazing marks in my report card and the most amazing comments written about me by my teachers in that report card. Whenever my friends used to ask for that report card to read, I would give it to them with a lot of hesitation. I would literally cover the front page of my report card with my fingers, hiding my address, which had the word chawl written in it. There was a fear that I'll be caught, that they will find out that I don't belong there. There was a fear of rejection, fear of being left alone. I used to curse my parents for putting me in Marathi medium when most of my friends, all my friends, were in convent schools. Looking at this shiny, big world outside and the small world where I lived in, I slowly developed the scale of comparison. This big, small, this good, bad. I was feeling very small. I was feeling very close. I was feeling very trivial, like I don't exist. When I started working, when I was working in corporate, surprisingly, I made some very good friends. They were so open that they would just put their heart out and just talk about it. It is with them I learned to share. I learned to open up. I felt accepted. I would proudly tell my stories about childhood, my upbringing, my family, my friends to them. And slowly, I became comfortable with the environment where I was raised, the environment where I lived in. Yes, I was so proud that I got past my shame that I had about my environment. Yes, I had dealt with it. Until the moment, it was just, I think, last month when I came across this word shame again, when I was asked to write a story about it. And at that time, I felt like, oh, what shame? I had it, I dealt with it. There's nothing now. For a couple of days, I just scratched my head and I was like, okay, there's nothing now. What do I say? What do I write? Until the day when I stood in front of the mirror. Yeah, it was not gone. I was cleaning the window, the dust from the window with my hand, and feeling happy that the window looks clean. But I did not see that my hand had sucked all the dust in and it was all black. Maybe I had dealt with the shame that I had about my external things, but I did not see here. Yes, I was carrying a big bag of shame on my back, and it was so heavy, it was pulling me down. Not knowing when I filled it up, not knowing with what I filled it up. I could not recollect any big events of embarrassment or any big incidents of some trauma happening in my life which could take me down so much. That day, I literally stood in the middle of the room, walking back my past step by step. And yes, there were no big incidents, but hundreds of moments just flushed, hundreds of moments just flooded. There was a lot of screechy noise, very loud, looking at me with a lot of contempt, mocking me, and saying to me, तुझे इतना भी नहीं आता है, ये भी नहीं पता तुझे, अरे ये तो कॉमन सेंस है यार, ओ तूने हैरी पॉटर नहीं देखा, which school did you grow up in, you are so slow. These were all mere words said by someone in just few seconds, but they were engraved in my head, deep and in bold. Every time I heard that line, it just got deeper and deeper and bolder and bolder. Like sharp arrows, they dug holes in me, leaving me hollow, empty, feeling nothing. Over a period, it got so internalized and toxic that I did not need anybody else telling me all this. I built up another Bhagishri in my head who would just keep shooting these arrows at me all the time. The other day, I was sitting on a lunch table with my husband on his office day. And he was telling me with a lot of excitement about his colleague You know what? Apsara is such an inspiration. She is handling her work in life so well. She's so balanced. She trusts her team. And she's so confident about her work. She's such a personality. You know, she drives XUV. And all I heard was, oh, I could not balance my work in life. Oh, I am not a good, smart personality. Oh, I don't drive. My heart stopped breathing for a while. There was buzzing silence in my head, suffocated by my own thoughts, bleeding by my own arrows. But when did I become such a big self-critique? Who told me that I am not good enough? Not my friends, not my teachers. My mother never said that to me, nor did my father or my brother. Oh, I picked it up. My mother used to get confused while counting money a lot. She used to struggle using computer. And all my father said was, "Itna bhi nahi aata tujhe? Ye to simple hai yaar. In which school did you go?" She would take it as a joke and smile about it. But a small girl in me saw her closing up behind, saw her feeling dismissed, saw her feeling that she's nothing. She's not good enough. She's never good enough. They were not just mere words. Now that I have seen it all, whose shame I am carrying, where it is coming from, what is it? It has made me more aware. Today, as I'm sharing this story with you all, as I'm putting my heart out in whichever vulnerable state it is to you all, it has given me that acceptance. I feel little more comfortable in my own skin. For me, it is a step towards accepting myself as who I am and acknowledging what all I can do than just cursing for what I am. So thank you all for listening to my story and giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bhagya. It was a very, very heart-touching story. Wonderfully acknowledged, Bhagya. Very heartfelt and touched deep within me. Wonderfully narrated. This is from Prasad. Thank you for sharing such a heart-touching story. Love the way you narrated and used pauses in your story. That is from me. Wow, what a beautiful straight into the heart narration. I literally felt stood in the room going backwards with you. This is from Ragini. So heart-touching, Bhagya. Could find myself in the story. Hats off to be so much vulnerable and share the raw emotions. You are wonderful and keep smiling now onwards. This is from Mahesh. Beautiful from Ragini again. Hi Bhagya. It was really raw, honest, and very relatable to me in many ways. Thank you. It was lovely. From Shruthi. It was so emotionally raw and candid. So beautiful, just like you, with a heart. This is from Kokila. Very depth, Bhagya, raw and honest. This is from Sivapriya. Aditya says, I felt so much courage in every word that was narrated. Thank you so much for sharing such a beautiful story. Loved your narration, Bhagyashree, and the demonstration of the power and strength of being vulnerable. This is from Kizzy. Thank you, Bhagya, for sharing your story. Your narrative style is captivating. I could feel the shame and then clarity which emerged that it was not your baggage to carry. I am feeling light too after listening to your story. This is from Jayashree. Brave, powerful, and raw. Love you more and more and more with a heart. This is from Harshvardhan. Okay. It's very, very touching. Thanks for sharing this. There was so much strength of Bhagya which was visible. How deep you went to the shame and figured where it has emerged. This is from Aishwarya. Thank you so much, Bhagya. Thank you so, so much for sharing that. I could relate to it a lot. Thank you. We have Jayashree back with us today. So over to you, Jayashree.
Hi, Anvita. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, Jayashree, we can hear you.
Okay, because there's still a lag for me.
Your voice is clear,
I'm
Jayashree.
going to keep my video off. Okay, I'm going to keep the video off because I'm still having issues with the
Sure,
net.
no. Yes.
Are you there? I'm,
Yes, Jayashree, we can hear you.
oh, I can see two of you. So
Oh.
I'm having a lot of issues, Anvita.
No problem. We can hear you, Jayashree. You can start narrating your story.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was the first week of June, probably the second or the third of the June. I was there. I was standing in the bedroom of my one-bedroom apartment in Sharjah, a bedroom which had a beautiful view from the balcony of the sea and the port. And every day morning, I would wake up to see the beautiful blue waters of the Arabian Sea and the many trawlers goods across to other countries. And but yet there I stood in that room that day. It was around 9 o'clock, and we had just, my husband and my sons and I, we had just returned from our morning uh, walk to the beach. I had spent the whole night very restless, and there was so much of disturbance in me. I just wished that it would be morning. And when it was morning, 5 o'clock, I just
There was a network issue again. Jayashree, can you hear us? Can wait for a couple of minutes. She's joining back. Okay, I think there is some technical issue. Thank you so much for all the beautiful stories we heard today. I think it took me back to the time like last year when I was doing storytelling classes and how we would just share with the group. And now I invite all the storytellers for today to come and share their experience of what storytelling means to them and how storytelling has changed their lives. Yes, Bhagya, Ragini.
Okay, for me, it has been a change of focus, I can say. Like, I still remember like when I did my first storytelling class, and when it was like initial couple of stories we were sharing, it was about, okay, I was there and this was happening, that was happening, this person said this, that person said that. And in the whole story, I was not there. It was just everything that I was seeing. After the storytelling classes and the experience, it has kind of changed the focus to me. Like now, when I'm telling stories or when I'm talking, it is me whom I'm talking about rather than things around me. So for me, the very first thing that it has changed is the focus. Like instead of seeing things impacting me, I'm trying to see me and what I am going through when things are happening around me. So that was one big change I can say. And like many things, like as initially Anvi you said, the reflective distance, fish being in the water and not knowing that it is in the water. So throughout the storytelling experiences when I was working on a few of my stories, this reflective distance or the witness part has become very prominent. Like uh, when I'm telling the stories, or earlier when I used to tell the stories, I was in the stories at times. When as a storyteller, when I was narrating the story and going through that experience, I would get that overwhelmed, or I would get that feeling of being low, or feeling of being too excited. But as we proceeded, it was that distance got built. Like when I'm telling a story, I am distanced from the character, or I'm distanced from the Bhagishri who's going through that experience, but still feeling that experience. It is not just getting overwhelmed or getting drowned in that experience. So that reflective distance has come or has become prominent. And that distance is not only like in the story or while telling the story, but it is also seeing that experience. So it gives a different eye to see that experience to me. Like if I've gone through some experience which is a bit overwhelming or full of emotions, then if I'm not seeing it with that distance or as that witness, I'm just going back to the memories and getting trained in it. But when I'm looking at it from the distance, I'm seeing beyond just me going through that experience. I'm seeing it as a third person. So that distance has definitely increased, and that is kind of helping heal the experience, because you are distant from the situation, you're seeing it, and then you can see it with an objective rather than just getting lost in it. So that has been a prominent point. Also, one learning that I'll share from my this recent story that I worked on was, initially when I worked on the story, like we go through a different different iterations of the story. So initially it's just experience that comes, and then we polish, change it from the emotional flow, the bare bones, and the polarity. So one beautiful experience that I had with polarities while working on the story was, initially when I came up with this story, it was all on the downside of the emotional flow. It was all like feeling that small, feeling that inferior, and it was all like that. And then when the story was like that, the end of the story was not coming to me. It was feeling like, okay, this is all I have, and the end is okay. I'm still feeling very low about it. But then when I was working on the story with multiple iterations, the polarity aspect came. And then when I started it with how I'm feeling good about my life now, that polarity gave me a positive tone to close that experience in my head rather than just seeing it. So that's how I've seen like polarities really helping in bringing that contrast, so that it can be healed, or it can be really, that experience can change in your own experience. So that has been another experience for me. So every time, like, different stories give different experiences. This is what I have felt so far. Also, like when I told my very first story, it was a simple story, and like till the very last session of my storytelling, I was feeling like, oh, this is too trivial, maybe so simple, should I even tell this as a story? But when I shared that, I felt like it was a small moment, or maybe a 10-minute incident in my life. But when I shared it like a story, it got magnified. And I saw so much in it, which I had really not, uh, like I had seen, but I had not really registered in me. So I feel that it gives me that magnification of some small thing which is here. It just gets magnified, and seeing it from so many different angles, and it is becoming alive for me. And it is all like, sometimes it is different memories which are staggered, they are not connected, I'm not able to link them. But when we go back to that experience and look at it as a story, then it kind of connects. You're trying to that filling those gaps. So that has been my experience so far. Like, it has given me a way to organize my thoughts, going back. And I really love the conclusion part of the stories. Every time when I'm thinking about the conclusion part of the story, it just kind of closes that experience in my head, is what I get a feeling. So that has been my experience so far with different stories that I have worked on. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhagya. I think I could relate a lot to that. Like how you said, initially you felt the story was very small. Sometimes that happens where I feel like this is such a small incident. How do I narrate it as a story? There is nothing big about it, or there is no drama to it, or it happens. Could really relate to what you were saying. Thank you for sharing your experience, Bhagya. Yes, Ragini, over to you. How was your experience?
Initially, when I heard about the art story Mandala, I felt it's about drawing my story and then just sharing the image of it. And I was excited because I felt it is a less of a job to do. I will just paint and put it. And then when I attended the first session, everyone was sharing, and I was very scared because I felt, how will anyone relate to my story? And I also have the habit of going blank in the middle. I did not know that there is a thread which is to be held. So I was extremely scared. And then the first story which I shared was of sensitivity. And while sharing it, I could feel the nourishing aspect of it, the healing aspect of it while sharing it, because it was the first time I actually looked at it from that aspect. Otherwise, it was just incidents which were then, being told into a story. Then there was the emotional flow in it. Again, I was very stuck with it. I could only feel two emotions most of the time, which were fear and joy. And I did not know there are in between emotions also. There is a lot of sense of accomplishment in the middle. There is anxiety, and there are other positive feelings also. So as I explored the emotional flow, I found a structure. And in that structure, I could flow with it. And then my story also was able to flow because of that structure. And it was not something which was holding me very tight, it was opening me up. So for me, that opening experience happened through the story mandala. And that was very new to me because I had never thought that I could open up, I could tell stories. And also the listening part of it, listening to stories of fear and shame. Somewhere deep inside me, I really wanted to hear the stories of fear, shame. There was also a story of song, night, and these were the stories I felt which triggered a lot inside me as a listener. And that's where I felt listening itself is a gift. And throughout my story mandala experience, layer by layer, I have got in touch with a lot of aspects that otherwise wouldn't have been accessed by myself. Going back into the memory lane, connecting with the child that I was, that has been a very healing experience because throughout the time I am in lookout for that joy. But that joy is like somewhere which I relate to when I look at my childhood more rather than present. But when I go and connect with that, that is where I bring in the joy at present also. I understand, all these memories have led me to somewhere, and it gives me immense joy to be in the present and tell that story, as Bhagishri was saying, from a detached witness point of view, and also holding many centers at the same time. It's a complex task, but then once I get into the experience of it, all of it just flows. So that's been a good experience. And I also understand like nourishment. I always felt nourishment means going on the inside and closing up. Like that is where I would heal. But opening up also provides nourishment. That's been a very newer kind of experience for me. So I'm very thankful to this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ragini. I think you beautifully explained how healing happens through storytelling, right? Like it's inside out, it's outside in, but healing keeps happening. Thank you so much for sharing that, Ragini. Over to you, Aditya. How was your experience?
Yeah, so for me, I think stories was a very eye-opening thing. Like, not because it was a very simple thing. Also, like, it didn't require you to have any complex knowledge of anything. But I think this challenge for me in my personal experience with stories was that initial tendency to kind of assume that the other person will know what I'm talking about. So whether it's emotions or whether it's, I would say, we would use. So, but I didn't understand the implications of that until, yeah, I think, okay, the video has gone off for some reason and it says the host is not able to. Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So my, yeah, so I would actually I would assume that the other person would know what I was feeling or what I was going through. So I would use words like you instead of I, and
Sorry to interrupt, Adi.
it
I
would
think
kind of, it wouldn't something, sorry.
yeah, I think there is a little bit of network issue. So probably you can be on audio.
Okay, is this better?
Yeah, it's better now.
Okay, yeah. So, so yeah, I mean, these were things that I had initially struggled a lot with because I felt I didn't need to communicate that much to really help people understand what I was trying to narrate. But once I overcame that, what had actually happened was I started to see that, okay, there is a whole other world inside of me that I can explore. Because I always felt, okay, I I just whatever I would say would be understood, but now I know there is a way that I form my own impressions and my own emotions about the world around me, and that is unique to me. And so that was a side that I started to explore a lot more. And yeah, I think one thing that really helped me with that was the emotional graph, where you really try and understand how it takes you through the wave of the story, and it sets things. It really helped me identify sometimes what I was really going through in those moments in my story, or was it really something that was just was it just something that I said to make the story better, or was it something I actually felt during the story? So these are some of the points that I think really experienced in my personal journey with stories in the story mandala. Um and now that detachment has actually helped me see things in a much more clearer way, and I understand that people's actions are, when I look at the world around me, it's not directed towards me, because now there is a distancing that has happened. And yeah, so I think it's really, when you talk about healing, it really has helped in a lot of ways for me.
Thank you, Aditya. Thank you for bringing in that reflective distancing, right? Like Bhagya was talking about, and all of us were talking about. The ability to be a storyteller or a witness and to look at a particular memory, that by itself is a very healing process. Thank you for sharing that. We have other people on the group who have gone through similar experiences, like Harshvardhan, Aishwarya, Gopal, all of them. So I invite you all to join the discussion and share your experience of how storytelling was for you. Harsh?
Yeah, hi. Like storytelling, I think the first time I did storytelling, I always used to think I tell a lot of stories. But when I told the storytelling thing first time, I realized all of the stories were like external, and I avoided looking at me. And I still remember the first time we worked on it, a lot of they, him, this, that turned into I, and I started looking at how the environment looked to me, how I felt in my body, and that actually made me experience the remaining part of the experiences, how I see it, of that moment. And through this journey, I think taking up instantaneous stories made me quickly want to distance myself and still bring out the details in the story. Somewhere I think I learned that my story jumps around, and that thread that I think Ragini correctly pointed, that thread, holding that thread is one big learning for me in the story.
Thank you, Harsh. Thank you for sharing that. I think initially, like when I started off with storytelling as well, I would always put everything else in my story in the center. I will talk about a doll, I will talk about a house. But then I realized, okay, I am actually the center of my memory. I am actually the center. Only if I put myself around the center, I can draw circles around it, and I can add the elements and all. That was a huge switch that happened to me, taking responsibility for what happened in your memory and being there. So thank you for sharing that, Harsh. It took me back to that time.
Okay.
Yes, Aishwarya. Hi.
Hi. So for me, this has been, there are two roles which has happened. One is as a teller and then as a listener also. So while sharing the stories or telling the stories, like everyone said, I was also very scared. I was to feel like, okay, what is there in this? Then making me come and sit and tell the story is more difficult. Like I cannot sit most of the time. I feel like restless and going away. I don't want to say that was the condition. But when I started sharing the stories, I started understanding actually most of the things are, these are what goes inside of the head. Sometimes it's just we perceive this is the way others are also thinking. So it's kind of like got a separation from that aspect of the mind and see that as a, as a third person, and so okay, this is what is happening actually. So in reality, this won't be there, but this is how you are just feeling. And it has so much power to hold you back. It creates a havoc in the entire system, make you stuck, make you believe that this is the truth, everyone is seeing you like that, like this, just the way Bhagya has shared. But in actual, maybe one or two would have said that, half of the maybe even not even bothered about us, and maybe others might be feeling good about us, we don't know. But this is how this is how that goes inside the mind. So that distance I was able to understand from the storytelling. Then there were instances where we became the shame, where we became the fear or the anxiety, and we started seeing on that perspective. So it has helped me after every moment of that session. It has helped me when I completely lose control and become completely panic or anxious. At the verge of it, I'll become that fear, and okay, now you are going to have this in that way. As I started becoming the fear and telling to me, what is the worst that might happen? I still live after that. So that's also a lesson which I got to learn from this story. So it's basically many things goes inside. There is a story that runs inside us most of the time. Then as a listener, when I was hearing others' story, how they came over certain instances or how they accepted it, how they went through that, it was also kind similar ways understanding, getting healed from other stories also. This is how it can be done. Feels so good when when example Ragini was sharing about how she overcame that fear of the cycle, falling down and connected back to the cycle. Something which we lost at some point of time started getting connected to it. So this has been a very wonderful journey for me, the storytelling, even though I couldn't present in the final session. Yeah.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
for everyone, mostly everyone who have been with me for this journey, including Prasad, I would like to sing one song. Like probably I was trying to make the story, but I was trying to sit and make the story. I couldn't make the story, but I ended up in a song. So I'll try to sing that song over here. I'm just trying. I don't know whether it's going to be good or not, but सारी उम्र हम मर मर के जी लिए, एक पल दो अब हमें जीने दो, जीने दो। ना 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 ना। सारी उम्र हम मर मर के जी लिए, एक पल तो अब हमें जीने दो, जीने दो। Give me some sunshine, give me some day, give me another chance. I wanna grow up once again. Ta na na na, ta na na na, ta na 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 na.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya. That was such a sweet, beautiful gesture for everybody. Also, we have something from Jayashree. She has put something on chat saying, "Hi everyone, was looking forward to narrate my story, but the internet connection is being wilderness. However, it was heroic allowing me to hear to others wonderful stories. So thankful for that." I think she has lost connection again. She is not here with us. Yes. So anybody has any experiences with storytelling? Or what stories mean in your life, and what is probably your first experience with stories? I think for me as a kid, I used to go to school in a van. So I would sit in the van by the window. I would fight for the window seat and sit by the window seat just to look outside. To look at people, I look at cars, I look at somebody selling something on the street, or I look at other small children walking on the street. And I would probably look at certain dogs walking on the street and I'll think, okay, where do they go home? Like, what is their story? What are they feeling right now? And if I spoke to them right now, what would they say? So my initial connect to storytelling was something that started like that. I didn't even know I was expecting stories out of people, but later when I started working on stories, I realized that storytelling was always there. Like how I started off with saying that fishes are in water, they don't see the water. So I was always in stories that I did not see the stories around. Yes. So, okay. So to the entire group, we have another story today. Our fifth story for the day by Prasad. Over to you, Prasad, all yours.
Thank you, Anvita. Okay, let me first take a breath. Every characters, every participants in the story are there in this group. Okay. I was a very free-flowing kid. Very free-flowing. I used to run around. I used to swim. My mother took me to the swimming pool there in the children's park in Cochin, and I used to swim there. I used to like being an athlete. I used to like being with friends. So I was a very free child, very free kid. My father's and mother's house was almost 2 kilometers in distance. So it was almost like a same single house. And I used to move from one place to another every day, or probably once in 2 days. My mother's father and my father's father, I used to be with my father's father one day, and in the next day I used to be with my mother's father. These two houses were actually polar opposites. My father's brothers and the family there was quite caring, quite empathetic. They used to speak to each other very nicely in a very low tone. They were all, most of them were bank employees. So they used to have a particular structure in life. They used to have a particular structure in life. They used to have a 9 to 5 job. So they used to go to the office and come back in the evening. So it was more of a structured life which I lived with my father's family. And each of them did not interfere with other people. Everybody was independent on their own. Like they were all, everybody was going as they wanted, and everybody was moving as they required. My mother's family, on the other hand, was they used to be very strong. They used to talk very loudly. They used to literally pounce at each other. They used to pull each other's leg. They used to bully each other. So they were rough. They were really tough. They used cuss words a lot. So morning when you want to get up, it was like balike modya utre. That means you dead cops, get up. That used to be the tone which they used. Very loving. That's how they know how to connect with people. So two different polar opposites, and me living as a small child with them. I was not able to understand which one to follow. Should I look at my father's family and take them as an inspiration, or should I look at my mother's family and take them as an inspiration? I had no idea. So I grew up as a very confused kid. Very, very confused. I didn't know whether I had to go for a day job should I aim for becoming an employee, or should I aim at becoming a businessman? Because my mother's side was all businessmen. So I used to always, like, when somebody says, Prasad, you need to get a job, I used to be very confused because the businessman will start playing them. When somebody says that, Prasad, you should do business, I used to be very confused there also. Why? Because it's better to have a security, you see, Prasad. That is the voice which I used to come in my head. So this incident happened when I was in the 5th standard. I was in my mother's house. I was playing around as usual. I was going here and there. All my uncles were there. My father was there. My mother was there. And suddenly, my uncle, third uncle, started bullying me, like pulling my collar. And I was starting to get irritated. And some kind of power started coming out of my body. Like, I was really starting to get irritated. 5th standard kid looking upwards to the uncle. And he was not listening to me. I said, don't pull me. Don't push me. He was not listening to me. He was playing with me, but it was a very power play. Suddenly, an aggressive personality of mine just came out from the child, and I turned around and I told him, bastard, stop it. The moment I said that, I started trembling inside me. My hands started shivering, my legs started shivering. I looked at my mom. My mom started walking from the other end of the hall. She's coming straight towards me. I was frightened. She came me as I expected. Patar, one tight slap on my chin. They could use all these words. I couldn't. My tongue rolled in. I couldn't talk. I turned around. My father was there right behind me. Nobody was even touching me. So I was that bad boy who uttered words which was not accepted by anybody. And my bad boy thing was not accepted by anybody in the world. My heart sank. Only if I behave like a good boy, everybody will accept me. So half of me is okay, half of me is not okay. After that, I remember as I grew up, wherever it needed aggression, I used to shiver. When somebody is trying to pounce on me, I used to shiver and back up. Right? Being bad is not good. Showing the strength is not good. Turning around, opening up yourself is not good. To talk for me was not acceptable. In my 10th standard, I joined the government school. I was taken to a government school. I studied there. It was full of bullies. It was full of people who used to use a lot of cuss words in Malayalam. We use these Are Bostike, Chutiye, Kutte, Kamine. All those were very normal. And that was not the tone which they used it. They used to use it in a very, very aggressive tone. And I was not able to join them. Even if my friends are talking, I wouldn't talk because my tongue has gone. I grew up as a frightened kid who was not able to support himself in terms of problems. I was not supposed to show aggression. I'll get a slap. I was frightened everywhere. Where I had to stood up, I did not stand up. There used to be instances where I used to run away. Whenever there's a problem, I'll run away. If there is a problem and if I want to face it, I'll start shivering inside all over. There were several instances which passed through where I hid myself in corners. Later on, when I started my spiritual journey, after the age of 40, I started looking at each and everything as to what it is giving. So I joined a Carnatic singing class, not Carnatic, the Hindustani singing class at the age of 44. One day when I went for the singing class, the teacher started yelling at me. Because I was not able to sing, the teacher was yelling at me. I didn't understand. Why is she yelling at me? I'm not able to sing. She's supposed to teach me. Why is she yelling at me? So I quietly bunked the entire class, and I got dropped out of the class, and I came back to my guru and I met my guru. I told her, see, the teacher yelled at me. She held my hand and she said, come, Prasad, let's go and meet her. How dare she yell at you for no reason? If you are not able to sing, that is why you have joined the class, no, to learn singing. How dare she yell at me? I remember those words. And she started walking. She started walking towards the school, towards the music place where, and she said, I want to ask the teacher right away. I want to see what she is going to do. Then I held her arm and I said, no, it's okay. I will go and talk to her. I'll deal with it, all that. She asked me, will you deal with it? I said, yeah, I'll deal with it. Are you sure you will deal with it? You seem to be very frightened. Said, no. This time I will deal with it. I'm not frightened. I'll go and talk. The moment I said, no, it's fine. I'll go and talk to her. Something inside me changed. The moment I saw the support from my teacher, something inside me literally changed. My heart felt wide open. My body was full of energy. I was standing straight. I was standing tall, eye to eye, with whoever I want to speak to. But then I saw the other person getting frightened in front of me, and I did not talk to the teacher. I came back. But now, when I'm telling you this story, instead of looking at things straight opposite to each other, I started looking at each and everything separately. As my father's family taught me a lot of love, care, empathy, which directly comes from my heart. My mother's family taught me how to stand up and show strength. The power that is there inside the system. Now, when I look at myself, I can be the businessman, I can be the employee, I can be the powerful person who's talking. I can use cuss words, I can use etiquettes. I can come from my heart lovingly. I have both the power and the heart. And now when I look at my mother, I see a very loving mother who wanted her son to be in the way the Dharma is. She wanted me to actually conduct myself very nicely. She wouldn't go and slap everyone at home. She only slapped me. There was so much of care, her heart paid. She showed so much of care that day. And I turned around and looked at my father. I saw a person who tells me that, Prasad, you can deal with this. You don't need me for it. He gave me so much of independence and openness. Now, when I'm telling you this story, there is no situation in life which would polarize me. You want strength? Yes, come, I have it. A lot of love and care? Yes, I have it too. You want me to be independent? Yes, I can. You wanted me to actually show you the authority? Yes, I can. You wanted me to show love and care? Yes, I can. Now I know I have all these abilities within me. And internally, very gratefully, now I thank my mother's family and my father's family and my mother, my father, everybody who was there in that situation to show me openness in every direction that was possible. It was very, very, very empowering for me.
Thank you so much, Prasad, for sharing that. It was straight from the heart. It was heartfelt, and the ability to look at polarities differently and look at them as two different things and not as the same thing together. Thank you so much, Prasad. The way you concluded the story, I took away a lot from that. Thank you. Mahesh says, astounding, just like the slap you received, with a smiley.
That slap was the key to every development.
Not making others wrong is a huge learning. Mahesh. Nice to hear you, Prasad. God bless. From Naveen Shenoy.
That's my father.
Yes. Love the balance you found in your journey, Prasad. Could really feel it. From Aditya. Thank you so much for sharing the story, Prasad. It was very deep. I felt like I was going through it myself, standing next to you. What a wonderful closure. It healed something within me too. From Bhagishri. The pauses between the story added more feel to the words. From Sashi Prabha. Wow, there is a way not to be caught between polarities and access what one wants at a particular point. Looks like such a brave new world. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Healing as the journey goes on. From Ragini. Something triggered inside me. A lot of it I can relate to with myself. From Raghav. I also shivered. Chanta mere ko bhi laga. Thank you, Prasad. ये वाला सिर्फ लगा नहीं, अंदर घुस के लगा. From Harsh. This story is a reminder for me as I connected to one of my stories. Thanks for sharing, Prasad. From Sivapriya. Prasad, it was so heart-touching. Felt so connected to it, just like the slap from mother, the polar opposite handhold of another nurturing love guru. and both teaching and opening up in 2 directions from Aishwarya. From polarity to neutrality, what a powerful journey. Thanks for sharing. From Sudharsan and Divya. Yes. Thank you so much, Prasad, for sharing that, for the surprise in the end, the surprise story in the end. Thank you. This evening for me was like every other day where I would wait to come and listen to stories. I want to be a listener. I just want to listen. The small girl who wanted to listen to stories outside the window, it was like that girl is so happy today to listen to all these stories. Thank you, Ragini. Thank you, Aditya. Thank you, Jayashree. Thank you, Bhagya. Thank you, Prasad, for sharing such wonderful stories. And the group for sharing your experience with storytelling. And Aishwarya for the sweet surprise. I'm waiting to listen to you in person. Please bring it to the expedition if possible. We would love to listen to you play in live. Thank you everybody for joining in today. I feel so grateful for being a part of the event today and can't wait to see you all on the final event on 10th October. Thank you. Om Asito ma sadgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityo ma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Thank you, everybody.